The second, time-based. It's great. So we just saw that we changed the status to fraud warning. Well, I sent you an email, and you haven't responded in 10 days. At the same time, I have reports in my dashboard say how many are in fraud warning, how many are in fraud warning. I don't want that to keep on growing, right? If you're a manager, to find out what's fraud warning are. So you want, you as an admin or a person who wants to enforce the process, want to reset the status 10 days after it was done. So that, it gets reset to post-it. So that means customer didn't care, it went to spam, he didn't care, so that's okay. I can revert it back to post-it, and if he calls back or whatever, we can send it back to fraud warning. But the whole point is, let the system do these automated things so that it doesn't impact the rest of your business. So how do we do that? Again, you don't need to go back to create a new workflow rule. Let's just go back to that workflow rule. Oh, did I save it? I didn't. Right here. So in the same workflow rule, you can see there are two sections. The top part is immediate actions. That means those are the actions which gets executed the moment the rule is evaluated true. You can also add time-based stuff to it. So all you need is we call a time trigger. This is where you define the timed element. You can just say 10 days after the rule trigger date. That's it. And quickly, in a couple of clicks, you added a timed element to it, and you can do the same thing. What you do is set it to post-it. That's it. So 10 days after the rule was sent, as long as it's still, what happens is as long as the rule is active, it come back and reset it to post-it. So this is great, but you as an admin, how do I know what's out there? Well, we have a view into the queue of things scheduled. There we go. 10 days later. So if you're a person trying to debug or want to make sure that things are happening or what are the things going to happen, we have a view into what's behind the scenes as well. All right. So hopefully they give you the two main important use cases of workflow, which is immediate actions as well as timed actions, and you can do different things. But as Force.com evolves, as you just saw, we have like a couple of 130,000 users, systems, like enterprises adopting us. The complexity of processes are already skyrocketing, right? So the declarative takes some time to catch up. I'm not saying it's never going to meet all the needs, but there are chances where you guys will be forced to go in and write some code to add the additional complexity, right? Whether it is code or Visualforce or whichever. So you need to make sure that you do the right thing that I was a developer, so I'm not saying I don't like code or anything, but I think as much as possible, you should go to the declarative side. And then, if it's not possible, just jump into code. It's no harm to jump into code. Just, if you want to send an email, just don't write Apex trigger to send an email. It doesn't make any sense. That's what I'm saying. I guess Salesforce has our own version of the Home Depot mantra, which is like, you can do it, we can help. I would like to call it, keep simple things simple, make complex things possible. I guess that's what it is. And to prove that point, that workflow is actually orchestrates very well with the rest of the technologies out here. Apex, Visualforce, and also email services, which we will show shortly. So what does it mean? Well, first is workflow and Apex could complement each other. Workflow always sees the data updated by Apex. That means if you are a pre-trigger and you change the value, workflow will see it. All the APIs, approvals APIs are exposed in Apex. Field update action, trigger Apex. So if you update a field that actually can trigger Apex, you do additional things. Similarly, even with the Visualforce, you can create a Visualforce email template and assign it to an email alert. And the same thing, if you have Visualforce controller, approval API is exposed there. So all these different tools are designed to work in harmony with each other, each of them serving a purpose. So let's go back to the app, and this is what I'm trying to say. So I sent you an email. It's great. Okay, then what do? Then I have to pick up the phone, call the company, get on hold. Sure, fraud warning is a little bit sooner than others, but still, there's a process for you. Wouldn't it be great if you can just reply to say, yeah, this is a fraud, or no, then that's done? Well, you can do that. So how many of you know how to do it? If I have to say, can I just respond to the BlackBerry and create a dispute? Do you think it's feasible? How would you do it? Interesting, but create a link cannot go and update a field. You'll have to because you're not a Salesforce employee, so you'll have to authenticate and things like that. So that won't work. Any other? Whom? How would you send it back? Whom will you send it back to? Then somebody has to look at that email and then type it in? We are almost there. So what the feature of the that you're able to do is what is called email services. It is essentially an email triggering Apex class. How many of you are aware of the email services part? So that's what it is. So Apex, we know that we can create a dispute record of any record you want in Apex, yeah? But the entry point of Apex can be the API or a custom application or a person logging into the application or the sites or whichever. There always needs an entry point for you to get into Apex. Well, actually, you can get into Apex just via email. And that feature is called email services. I'll show you how it is. So you create an email service, and what you do is you assign a class to it. And when you do that, you have like a specific email address. This is the unique email address for this particular class. And this class, sorry about that. I wrote this up in overnight, but it's a lot of debugs and stuff. But anyway, this class is no different. You can go and update using the API, which any other way. This class will create a dispute record. It's just how does it get invoked? That's what we're talking about, right? It can go and create a dispute record. So what we do is we created a class, which in this case parses off the body of the email, and this is the way of creating a dispute record. There's nothing specific or special Apex or anything. It's a standard Apex. But the only difference is it is coming from what is called an email service. So here's the deal. So this address, so somebody has to reply to this address, and you can see it's a huge cryptic. You can't say, oh, please send an email to this. You want to override the reply to. Again, this is a gap right now in the declarative point and click where I would like to support it. It's on my roadmap, but again, as I said, it's not that it's not possible. So what you do is you create a Visualforce email. This is like any other email, but if you look at the template, it is very, very simple. Trust me, guys, it's so simple. I'll show you what it is. All it sets is, it sets the header to, it sets the reply to header to that, it sets the reply header to that unique. That's it. That's all it does. Let's see how that works. So for that, again, these are the things. You as a developer can work on this, whatever. When you're ready, go to your admin. Okay, start using this VF template. So I'm just going to go to this template. I'm going to change this alert. Start using the VF template. That's it. In one click, whenever you're ready, you can change the alert to use the VF template. So what does that mean? So let's create, let's clone this guy. Say charge. I'm going to create one for 101. I should say $1 million. But so again, you can see it's set for fraud warning. I should have got, but you can see it has changed. And did you see your friendly support? Well, that is your from address, which we just changed to support@acme.com, or in this case, your acme support@gmail.com. But more importantly, look at the reply to, and the content again can be anything. So what you do is just reply. And again, this is completely where your business will tell you, do you want to automatically create? What are that business process is completely up to you guys. But in this case, I'm saying, I have a keyword called dispute. I can have comments. You can do all those things. So I just send it. And you go back to this. There you go. Boom. So you can see how all the technologies here work together to satisfy a simple business need of sending an email and providing a capability for your customers to respond to that email and take action behind the scenes. So that's the dispute. So the 3 slides. The top is the Visualforce email template. The second is the actual email alert. Bottom is the email service, which is a class which points to the dispute handler. So that gives you an idea of how they're all kind of interrelated to each other, right? So we created a workflow rule which already creates a field update, which could potentially trigger Apex. You want to do something. We send out an email alert to anybody. We have a completely closed loop, if you want, through the reply and take action again. So the next is approval processes. Approval processes is yet another one of probably the most common use case of automation in any company. Most of you probably went through an approval process to attend to this. Most probably will go back and submit an expense report which goes through an approval process. And I know I'm going to take PTO after this, where I'm going to send a few days off to my manager. This kind of tells you what it is, right? A person submits a request, we lock the record, set the chat status to pending, you send it an email and a request to your manager, the manager can approve, and you automatically take. In our case, in Salesforce, we use ADP as a payroll system. So we implemented our own PTO approval process using an approvals engine where once it's approved, we actually send a SOAP message to ADP so that they get notified on how many days off so that they can update the payroll system. So this is another example where there's a simple process that lets you automate the process at the same time, integrate other systems as well. And you can do all this without writing a single line of code. I'm not saying you cannot do that in Apex or even Java, but it's a nightmare to manage. So again, what does Salesforce provide? We provide a simple point-and-click designer to build these rules for you. You can create a simple single-step approval process, or you can have a multi-step approval process. We provide you a variety of routing capabilities out of the box. We provide you a way to traverse a hierarchy. Expense reports is a classic example. You submit a report, it goes to your manager. If it's for $1,000, the manager has $500 only as a limit, then it can go to the next level. Go up the hierarchy. You can do that. You can route to specific people. All requisitions more than $1 million have to be routed to Mark. That means the Mark is the last person to approve. You can implement that by route to specific people. You can route to queues. These are great for groups of people, though the star behind that is queues is available for only certain objects, but for all those objects where queues are supported, you can route to queues. Email approval. This is another thing I didn't show you, but when I send you a request, and if you're a sales guy, somebody's traveling all the time, he or she doesn't need to log on to Salesforce. He can just reply through his BlackBerry or an iPhone. And we also provided parallel approvers feature where you route the request to multiple people, and you can configure the system such that all of them have to approve before it goes to the next step, or just one person. And as I said, the more complex things we need to support, we need to have an ability to plug that in a relatively easy manner. So we do support dynamic routing, where you're routing to a field on the record, which can be determined by Apex. This is another thing where you have a specific, simple way of plugging in code, but overall benefit is still simple, right? You still have a leverage the point-and-click technologies and delegate the routing to this small bit of Apex code. So that's what we call dynamic routing. In fact, I have a package on the AppExchange. You go to AppExchange and search for dynamic routing. There's a complete concrete example of the whole class, the triggers and everything, which lets you kind of see how this dynamic routing can be leveraged if you have a complex business process which is not going to be satisfied just with standard approvals engine. How many of you built an approval process? It's not bad. So let's see. So in this approval process, from a use case, I'm saying is all disputes should be routed to the supervisor, and any dispute over 8,000 should be routed to the regional manager. I'm just throw it out of my ear, but something like that. So let's see how we can do that. Similar to workflow approvals are here. So I have this dispute settlement process. As you can see that it has a couple of things. It has a failed update on the initial submission. Oh, it has only one step. Okay, I need to implement this. How hard is it? Well, it's as good as a few clicks away. So I just create a new step. You can say send to regional manager. And I'm saying I need to send it to him only if the amount is greater than 8,000. So I'm just saying dispute amount greater than 1,000. And I can pick the people. In this case, I'm just going to pick myself. Maybe Bruce has a lot of money. He can approve. So and as this is where I can have multiple people, I can try to send it to Clark, even though it's poor. But I can make it unanimous, or first, this is where you want to display all or nothing, and then save. And that's it. So in a very quick way, just implemented a process or modified an existing process to implement a certain business process. Now, I activate that. Let's go back to the dispute, this one. So you can see that this incorrect amount, I don't have the amount, and I'll make it, the whole thing is this. I'm going to save that, and I'm going to submit this for approval. If you can see that, you can type it to different, and the approvals again, you can say the incorrect amount goes to a certain process, or unknown transaction can go to a different process. You can build all those things when you're defining an approval process. Let's take a look. In this case, I'm saying this is true, only the dispute type equals to incorrect. So this is the way you can have different types of approvals, different chains of approvals based on some business condition. So if in case of PTOs, you can say if you're an EOS employee, you go to these. If you're from EMEA, you can go to this. So you can have different approval processes which potentially have different chains of approvals, and you can build those out. So let's do that. So I'm going to submit this for approval. Hope it's okay. That's what I thought. Hold on. What did I do? Say dispute type equals incorrect amount. Is that valid? And disputed amount. Sorry. I have my manager. I don't think it's set up properly. So I'm just going to change that to somebody else. So the manager is a field on the user record. You can set who the correct person is. In this case, I apologize. I hadn't set it up properly. So I'm going to do that. Again, if you want to change something, it's very easy to do that. So I'm going to submit this. There you go. The moment you submit it, notice that we lock the record. That is because you can see there's a record lock, and there's also a field update called pending review. And you can see that at every step, when you start approving it, everything is just logged in audit trail. So you know when the request was sent, to whom it was sent. And we also have the capability of a delegated approver. That means suppose you're on vacation, you can assign somebody else to do it, so he can respond on your behalf. So you can do that as well. And at the end of the process, you can either choose to keep the record locked or unlocked. This is kind of an interesting thing we built because expense reports is a classic example where you want to make sure that your submitter don't change the expense amount while it is an approval process. That loophole, I would get more money in my bank account. But so that's what an approval process is. So again, this is like a summary. So before I get into, how many of you have heard or seen the process visualizer? Great. So for those of you who are not, you saw that the approval process was like a long text representation. How many of you, tell me, you can be honest, how many of you think that that should have been a Visio diagram or a flowchart diagram? So that's what this is. Because an approval process, as the term process, is a process. And representing a process in text doesn't suit the user's mental model. Most of them, here is a process, why don't you draw a flow chart, why don't you give me a Visio diagram? That's how they represent process. The process visualizer is the tool which lets you have a visual representation of this process. It makes it easier to view and understand the steps to be, what are the different steps, who are the different people, who can approve each step, and who are involved in the process. So if you go back to this, I'm going to take a different, a little bigger approval process here. You can see that this is for the campaign budget approval I have. It had like 7 steps, and different people at different steps. There are a lot of conditions which lets you, if it's not met, go to the next step, and things like that. So it's kind of, if you look at it, it's very hard to understand what the flow is going to look like. That's one of the problems with the current editor. And also further, if I were to tell you, show me where Bruce is involved, it's just hard to find out. It's really hard to find out. Okay, Bruce, I can see here, but what about actions? If I were to tell you, does Bruce receive an email alert? It's kind of hard to find out, right? So these are some of the pain points we're trying to address, not just designing a tool which looks cool or anything, but also as the technology is adopted, people like you have actually kind of told us, hey, this is not good. We want you to do that. So before that, I wanted to do one more thing. How many of you knew that the process visualizer was in beta? One person. So this is kind of an interesting thing. So we've released a feature in beta primarily because we didn't have time to plug in an important feature, which the printable view, as we call it. So when we did the usability tests and other things, everybody asked, you guys asked, okay, process is great, but I want to be able to print this and use that as a documentation. And the process visualizer at the time didn't. So we decided to still put it in beta anyway. But what thing we did, which continued to do it, I'm going to show you, is we put a link directly in the tool to an ID Exchange post to gather feedback. And these are all the comments. And I really want to thank you out loud to telling us that printable view is very important to you. This is one of the most resounding feature enhancements requests. So thanks for all these things you guys did, even though they're not in this room. But more importantly, we have, or at least me, we are continuing to take this approach in all the features. You'll see that in the GA version of Process Visualizer also, there will be a link where you can click and provide your comment. Because as a product manager, that's the best way for me to get all your comments in one way, and people can talk to each other, which is great. So thank you all for that. So let's take a look at the Process Visualizer. So there's a diagram called view diagram. So when you click on that, it essentially brings out a printable view or a diagrammatic view of the whole process. One of the things about the moment you put in a diagram is the process can become long. So we wanted to make sure we provide EOV technology and tools out there to navigate the process. So there's zoom here. You can zoom in and zoom out. And also, you sort of have this, what you call a navigator, which lets you scroll down and take a look at the process. Essentially, you have a view to the process which is not there in the visible area. This is the printable view, which essentially is the same diagram, but it is annotated. And at the bottom, you have footnotes of what that means, of the complete documentation of what that process is. So you print it out, save it as PDF, send it out. So a lot of admins thought this was one of the most valuable features, because if they were to talk to the business analysts, the only way right now, either screenshot, which is hard if you have a long process, or, okay, I'm done, so why don't you log into Salesforce to see if it is okay. Now, they don't need to do that. They just print it out, send a soft copy, They can print it out, give them comments. Hey, actually this is not the process I want. I want to add another person here. Then they send it back, and they can implement it. So it kind of eases around the whole experience of building an approval process. So here's the other thing, which is great. But I want to get more information from the process as an admin, especially if you're a new admin or a new person who want to see what's going on and enhance it. It's kind of hard to get information out. So this is where the integrated find comes. As you type, you have a search, which actually searches, highlights, and you have classic next find that you would find in any browser search. A lot of the ideas is actually stolen from Firefox and Safari, all the design patterns. So let's see if Bruce is involved. You can see that Bruce is involved in many places. But what about as an approver? There we go. He's an approver here and here. What about, does Bruce receive email alerts? Looks like he does. And we automatically scroll. And you can see that the navigator is kind of integrated into it. So you have a hit here, and actually go and find out, oh, it happens here too. So, and if you're an admin, you want to find out, you have a field, and you want to find out if the field is used, so you want to change the API names, or you want to find out what's happening with the field, then you can just say, you know what, let me look all. Okay, it looks like it's used in an entry criteria, but there are 11 matches. I want to find out if it's being sent to any third-party system I have. There you go. I just filter on an outbound message. You can see that it is being sent at the end of the final approval to a third-party system. So that is the process visualizer, which is GA right now. But tomorrow morning, 10:15, I think you have the roadmap. I don't know the name of the session. There is a road ahead type of thing by Maris Cotton and Adam Torman. You will get a sneak peek of what is coming more in the process visualizer, where everybody is asked, hey, I want this to be the way of creating a process and editing a process. So you will see what more is coming in the process visualizer. And going forward, this would be a way for us to define processes. We are heavily investing in more like a very diagrammatic way of defining a process, because I think that's what truly it should be. So, some of the key takeaways. How easy was that? Right? Point, click, done. That's the key thing. To get started, it's just point, click, done. No coding changes. No coding to change. Build approval processes in minutes, not months. Seriously. I've had several customers who have built this whole approval process in Qualcomm. I think they built it in 6 weeks. A whole division automating the contract request process in 6 weeks. And you saw again, Jim Shepard at Vitrazo, they built the whole thing in like hardly any time. And deployment is also very, very quick. Point, click, use Sandbox for all these things, and then one-click activation. And again, more importantly, you can see that all of them have the things, no coding to change. On the key things you want to, that's what I'm saying. I think if there is something I want to tell you guys is like, see what's out there in the declarative side. Leverage it as much as possible. Because one of the problems of coding is maintenance. And you rather maintain a code which needs to be maintained, which is important, keep it aside. See how much of that can be automated by the out-of-the-box stuff, and then use coding for something. At the same time, I'm making sure that all the things which you guys are forcing to write code goes back into point and click. So that means Salesforce has 3 releases every year. There's so much stuff coming out. I would recommend you to take a look at the release notes and find out, okay, what can we now do? Get rid of code, right? So override from address, there might be a way of doing it sending an email in Apex, but now it's not needed. So if you had something like that, just throw that code out, right? Reduce the manageability, clean up your code, what is not needed. Let us do the hard work for you, focus on the most important critical things which is not possible out of the box by point and click. So, and the other key takeaways is the biggest aspect of any implementation, I think, is planning. I think that takes more time than implementation, honestly. The second is start using workflow. You've seen what's possible, essentially, from every aspect of the Force.com technology, and start gaining benefits. You have so many banners saying ROI and all those things. A lot of it you get from getting onto Salesforce and automating a process. And remember that workflow is dynamic. It's not static, right? You can change. You change. It adapts to your change rapidly. Your businesses will change, so you need technology out there that lets you change with you rapidly as well. And update, as I said, you need to have a tool that lets you make these changes easily without writing any code. That's what it is. So what are the next steps? The zone, I'm sure you already said, is right here. So if you have any questions or any issues, I'll be at the zone for some time, and there are several other people. We can help you answer the question. How many of you have used the workbook and done stuff? The workbook is a great way to introduce all the different aspects, including Apex. So, and more importantly, the feedback of the session is very, very important. We have a debrief based on the comments and everybody. We share and see, okay, this is what it is. What do we do to improve the quality and the content next year? So this is one of the most important aspects for us and for me personally to get your feedback on the session, both the content, the style, whatever you want to say. Hey, I didn't like your shoes. It doesn't matter. I'll get better shoes next time. But please, this is very, very important that the survey is very valuable to us. So with that, we have like around 10 minutes or so, so I'm open to some questions. Yes, if you can come to the mic or if you can. The process visualizer, when is it available? The read-only version, what you saw was actually GA. It's available now. The editability is coming up next. But what is available right now is GA now. Yes. So that is the classic coding. What do you want to do? Do you want to throw that email out, or do you want to create a new record maybe with a different status, so that the call center agent can call him back, things like that. So that completely depends upon how you want to do. Because that's a piece of code which is purely dependent on what you like to do. People can reply without nothing. People can reply with things which you don't understand. So it's kind of that's where the coding kind of helps, because the code essentially parses the response, right? So it understands as a dispute, then creates a dispute record. You could also say the next line, enter in comments. You could take that and put in the comments field. Completely depends on what you like to do. Yes. I'm sorry, that was not. So you're saying, can I send an approval request to people outside my company? That is something to consider. It's not there yet, but it's definitely, yeah. I'm sorry? Is there a version for workflows? That's a good point. Currently, there is no versioning for workflows. There is some kind of funky versioning for approvals, but not for workflows yet. The way you do it is, though, we have the concept of activation and deactivation. So that's the sort of a funky way of doing it. But that is something I'm considering the whole, how do you make sure that you just don't, by mistake, push something in production. That's something I'm considering as well. Yes? So when you create a workflow rule, you are based on some criteria, and that criteria is dynamic in the sense it's based on the record or parent records, and you can span and things like that. So if you want to send out a workflow to these people because he or she or some aspect of the record, that is certainly possible. As the recipient, there are some capability recipients I can maybe can take offline what is possible, and I'll also tell you what we're working on. Yes. Yeah, I'm not too sure myself about the email services email address, how that works. That's something maybe, again, we can go to the zone and find out talk to the right people. Any other questions? Yes. So right now what happens is there's an approval history table or a field or an object which tracks the whole thing. You go to a record, you can see in a related list the approval history, where what things are. The way you want to, if I understand your things, is you want to summarize in a dashboard. Is that the type of things you're looking for, or? So the way you want to do it right now is you can have field updates at different parts of your process, like the first step, second step, third step, and you can actually run reports which tells you what is the status of the field update type of thing. So there are ways of getting that information out. One of the areas I think trying to address here is more like an out-of-the-box reporting capabilities on the history. That is also something I'm working on. It's not visual, it's just a report to see how many of my expense reports are stuck with this guy. So there are things like that. There are out-of-the-box reports already. It tells you the pending approval requests or my approval requests and things like that. So there are some admin reports, but that's a very limited capability. Any other questions? No, these queues, the question is, what about the queues? What are those queues? The queues here are essentially, the Salesforce itself has a concept of a queue, which consists of users or roles and groups and things like that. So you can send the request to that queue within Salesforce. The queuing, I believe, is exposed, so you can sync up and stuff, but that's somebody else's, some other way of doing that. Yeah. Any other questions? I got 5 minutes. Going once, twice. Anyway, thank you guys. Thanks a lot.